Well, good morning. We are at the Western Cape Provincial Legislature to meet with the recently appointed Minister of Mobility, Mr. Ricardo Mackenzie. We understand that today we had expected a total shutdown in the city of the Western Cape, as SANTACO had planned a shutdown throughout this city, calling for a number of their grievances to be addressed pertaining to an issue of impoundment of their vehicles, the bylaws, and some of the issues. But we will speak to the Minister to try and to understand from him, to unpack to us and also to ascertain some of these grievances that were raised by the taxi bosses associations. We understand there are a number of complex issues that they've been raising. Last week, some school pupils, over 5,000 in Khayelitsha, were not going to school as a CODESA association were protesting against the fact that they do not, they are not considered for the tenders that are in the taxi industry. But let me bring in Minister of Mobility, Mr. Ricardo Mackenzie. Minister, warm welcome and congratulations to your position. Is this baptism of fire, the first time you got into your position and there was a planned shutdown? How did you manage to avert that, and what were some of the issues there?
Thank you very much, and thank you for having me. On Monday, after I was sworn in, I reached up to the leadership of SANTACO, and after lengthy discussions until late on Monday, we agreed to a meeting on Tuesday. There were several issues raised by SANTACO, which we discussed in that meeting with the City of Cape Town and as the Western Cape government, and looking to a way on how we could resolve that issues. The first thing is the learner transport was not part of that, because that matters before the court, so that matter the court will decide on Friday. There are 7 to 8 issues that is solvable, that we can solve if we work on it together, and that's what we agreed to it. We agreed to the 7 issues that we can solve if we work, only if we work together on it. Not government on its own, not SANTACO on its own, because a R1 billion strike to the economy was not going to solve these issues. And because we know, unfortunately, sometimes the stayaways and strikes come with extreme violence, and millions of commuters are affected. Because we could agree to those issues and agreed on how to solve it, they then, after they went back in their own meeting, agreed to stop the stayaway, and we agreed to form a team which I will lead, which will meet every single Tuesday for 2 hours and go to these issues and resolve at minimum 1 issue per week. And I believe it can be done. We've already tasked the officials with working on it. I spoke to the leadership of SANTACO first thing this morning. I was at the Mitchell's Plain bus station first thing this morning. They stuck to their word. The buses are running. Taxis are working perfectly. No issues reported this morning. So we will do our part because they stuck to their word.
So when they came to you and announced this planned shutdown, what did they say were some of their serious concerns that they need to be addressed, especially urgently?
One of the issues that they've raised, which is constantly raised, is the issue of empowerment. Now, every government in this world has set up laws that needs to be enforced. That is a non-negotiable. The other issue they've raised is the permitting and the operating permits. Those are issues that we as government need to work with SANTACO to solve. For example, if someone builds a shopping center 50 kilometers from the city of Cape Town, people need to get to work. We know that. Thousands of people need to travel. The trains are not functional. So the taxis and buses is one of the best ways to travel. So how do we put an operating system in place? Because automatically, if taxis operate on that route, they will be deemed illegal because there's no operating permits on that route. There's no permitting system established. So law enforcement will do what law enforcement does. They'll enforce the law to say the taxis are illegal. That's a legitimate concern from SANTACO. So how do we ensure the permitting system, the operating system? So when a new shopping center is built, that the permitting system, the licensing system works so that taxis can apply to be legal. That is a big issue, and that is the issue we're working on now to resolve, because there are existing places where there's no proper permitting system in place. So the law enforcement will do their part and say, hey, you're operating illegally, rightfully so, because there's no permitting system in place. So we will work on that. Once a week we will solve. We'll take one issue. One of the big issues is Brackengate, to solve out those permitting systems so that law enforcement, when they go there for the next operation, the guys can stand and say, hey, I've got a permit. That is a big issue that we're working on resolving urgently.
So would you say their concerns were justified? Because in the past they have said that when they are trying to go to the offices to register for those permits, sometimes there's huge backlogs, and when they go back to the road, law enforcement officers obviously institute their duties.
I think the backlog of permits, there's two different issues. The backlog of current permits has been sorted. I don't think there's a backlog in those permits. And those drivers and the taxi owners that must apply for that permits, fairly and squarely so. I think the issue is about the operating permits and the route permits to establish a route and how we can resolve those issues jointly. I think that is the big issue. Because once you've established a route, you can then establish permit. You can say X, Y, so many taxis must legally operate on those routes, and those taxi owners can then apply for permits. So the route permitting issue, to establish a permit route, for example, between here and Brackengate to allow taxis or buses operate on those roads legally, must be established by us as the regulator, and we're working with them to establish those routes urgently.
And also in your analysis, what seemed to have been a problem then in the route permits?
Well, I think there has been a severe breakdown of communication between the respective parties, and that will now be sorted out. The taxi industry will be part of the task team. So they won't stand outside and apply to inside. They'll be part of the team that will meet every Tuesday to resolve these issues. I think that's an important step forward.
The strike by Codeta last week caught the whole country by surprise, as thousands of learners were not going to school. When we spoke to their officials, they were raising concerns about the fact that they also need a slide in the tendering system, in the school transport system. The government in the Western Cape did say they will not be held at ransom by extortion activities. How do you understand about that, and also how are you planning to resolve it?
Well, that matter is in front of the court, so I honestly do not want to speak to it because the court case is 2 days from now on Friday. But the principle is anyone, anywhere in this country, in this world, can tender for any business. Whether it doesn't mean a specific industry. Can't keep a specific piece of cake for a specific industry. It doesn't work like that anywhere in this world. And we're not unique to South Africa. But that matter is in front of the court, and the courts will make a determination on that matter on Friday.
Okay. So this strike was withdrawn, and you said you will meet every Tuesday. What is the plan way forward for now?
Well, the way forward for now to deal with the 7 issues that the taxi industry raised, including issues that we raised on driver behavior. I mean, we all know, we've seen it in the morning. I saw this morning in Mitchell's Plain, drivers driving up a one-way. It is not acceptable. So it's both ways. Both parties need to work on their issues so it can be sorted out. The plan forward, once a week, 2-hour meeting, addressing some of this issue, ensuring one of those items raised every week get done and we tick it off. That is the plan going forward.
About a month ago, there was another strike regarding the Blue Dot incentivizing system. How was that resolved, and also what is the situation there? The
Blue Dot matter has been dealt with last year. That matter was also not part of the agenda, but it was an important part of Blue Dot part of the agenda. The important part of Blue Dot is driver behavior. The taxi industry themselves raise a concern now that the technology is not there of Blue Dot, now that the managing of the taxis and the tracker system is not there. They have difficulty in tracking their and managing their driver behavior and ensuring accountability for their drivers. That is an important issue the taxi industry has brought up, and that will be part of our weekly meetings to see how we can use existing technology to ensure that drivers are held accountable for their behavior and hold accountable. And the taxi industry actually raised that themselves. I'm very proud that they've raised it themselves, how to hold drivers accountable for their behavior so that passengers can get to work safely.
If this strike had gone ahead, you were projecting a potential loss of over R1 billion in the economy. Talk to us about how big this industry is, how many people are going to be affected, and also how does it relate to the economy of the Western Cape?
Let me put it in perspective. Last night at around 5 o'clock, I received an email from the CEO of a big retail company. And they were welcoming that the strike has been called off because 5,000 of their workers were going to be affected in going to work. That's just one retail store. By our estimates, we were looking at the strike was going to cost the economy R1 billion. So avoiding the strike for us was a very important matter. And the taxi industry. In fact, when I made my input to the taxi industry, I said we're sitting with stage 6 load shedding. We're sitting with a mental health crisis in the country. Having an additional strike to the economy was going to cost all of us. No one was going to benefit from it. Nor the taxi industry, nor the taxi owners, nor the passengers, nor the government. No one benefited from any strike.
Thank you so much.
Thank you very much.
Minister of Mobility in the Western Cape, Mr. Ricardo Mackenzie, just bringing us up to speed with that planned taxi strike, which was going to take place here in the Western Cape. Of course, just narrating how it was going to affect the economy of the country as well, purporting that over R1 billion loss is projected to have been the potential loss of this particular strike, especially exacerbating the current situation in the country that we are faced with. The taxi drivers were going to embark on a strike relating to a number of issues, really, from the permitting issues on the routes, which are the issues that are being addressed now between the provincial government and the taxi associations. From myself, Atule Joka, colleague Lukhyanyo Mazantsana, back to you, studio.